Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kesgrave Panthers Podcast. Today, our guest is 2015 British champion Zac Payne of the Horspath Hammers. How are you today, Zac?
Yeah, good. Thanks, lads. Thanks for having me on.
That's good.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so how did you get into cycle speedway?
Cool. I was 14 at the time, and I was helping out coaching a football team in the local village that I worked at. And the chap who ran the team with Adrian, his son Harrison, was a junior up at Horspath, and he said one day, "Oh, do you want to come up, have a go?" So that's how it started basically from there. But Harrison no longer rides anymore. But yeah, I was 14 when I started, so 11, 12 years ago now. Yeah.
So did you then stop coaching with the football, or did you carry on with that as an extra thing to Speedway?
I think I probably carried it on for about a year or two. And at the time I was still playing football as well myself. But you boys know Cycle Speedway, there's a lot of commitment involved with the Saturdays and the Sundays and traveling up and down the country. And I think I was about 16 when I gave up playing football, just because the clashing with Cycle Speedway all the time, it was either one or the other, because I couldn't really do both.
Yeah. Did you think you'd get further in cycle speedway, or was it just something that drew you more to cycle speedway, or was football just not really?
Yeah, possibly. I think there's more chance of winning the lottery than there is of making it as a professional football player, people say. And I think Cycle Speedway just at the time was something completely different, caught my interest. And yeah, I enjoyed Cycle Speedway from the get-go when I first started. And I thought, why not give this a go properly and give up the football so I can focus a bit more on the cycling.
So why do you ride now? What do you ride for?
Now, it's one of those sports I find it quite difficult to give up. I think, especially over the last year of COVID, I have lacked a bit of motivation coming back this year, just because there's no real fixtures sort of in the calendar or anything like that. But I ride now just because of the enjoyment and helping those sort of others around me. I'm quite heavily involved at the Horspath Club. And also as England junior manager, I think it's nice to give something back to the sport as well.
Yeah. So what exactly did you do at Horspath? Are you just a rider, or are you other stuff? Or
Yeah, so I've been sort of first team rider now for probably since 2013. So that's when I really sort of broke into the first team. But sort of 2015 was when I sort of took on the Southwest first team manager role, and since then I've been the first team manager. I try and get up on a Wednesday night and help out with the junior training with our other club coach Lee, and yeah, track work. We're a small sort of village based club, so there's not huge amounts of volunteers, so we're sort of always up there just sort of cracking on with everything.
So if you did stop riding for any reason, do you reckon you carry on with the managing of things?
I think so, yeah. I definitely wouldn't want to leave everything behind. I would like to stay connected with Horspath and the sport itself as well.
Yeah. Do you think you enjoy the riding aspect of cycle speedway more, or do you quite enjoy the managing aspect as well?
I think the first sort of major management job that I had was definitely the sort of England junior role, and the first competition was the home internationals, which would have been 2019, I guess, up at Ipswich, and we won that quite comfortably. And then we went out to Poland later that year for the World Best Pairs and the World Team Cup. And I might be wrong. There's people out there that have got stats and all sorts of stuff, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I think when we won the Team Cup, we're the first junior team to do it on sort of Polish soil, the first team to ever win it out there. England have won it before, but never in Poland, I don't believe. But I definitely got a different kind of sort of like buzz and a bit of feeling from when I've managed at Horspath or raced and won something myself. It was a different kind of feeling, and it was really nice to see that for the lads that raced in the best pairs in the team cup, and to win both of them was a great feeling.
So when you're managing, do you feel like you're part of the team, like as if you would, like if you were a rider?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you have to be in some ways, but I think the relationship you have with the riders has to be obviously at a professional level, but you've got to have fun and enjoy it as well. And the lads that have sort of raced under me previously, I'd like to think they would say the same thing, that we had a laugh and a joke around in the pits and stuff. But when it needed to be serious, it was serious and heads were screwed on and it was game time.
Yeah. Like, as a manager, do you think you take on stuff from like previous people who have managed you, or do you think you have like your own style of managing?
Yeah, I think I've definitely picked things up from people. You probably won't sort of like know the name, but Robin Carter was the sort of a big name at Horspath and was manager there for absolute years. But he passed away in 2012 with cancer. And you ask any single senior rider around the country these days, and they will say that he was one of the best managers that was out there. And it was a privilege to ride under him for probably only a couple of years that I did first team level. But yeah, I definitely picked some things up from him. And I think the other person I picked stuff up from was Mark Bowler as well.
So what's your most memorable like event when you were actually riding?
Oh, it's probably two for me. Probably 2015 British Championship up at Ipswich. I don't think a single person on that day, even myself, thought I was going to win that. But that, on the flip side of that, I think that was a big learning curve for me. I went into that event not thinking I was going to win it, but now I think you have to go into every event you race with like a positive mental attitude, to think that you are going to win, you are going to do well. If you go in there thinking you're going to lose or not win, there's not much point in being there. But yeah, 2015 British Championship was a good one for me. And probably the 2017 World Final in Australia. That was a big moment for me as well.
Yeah. So how did you like enjoy that experience down in Australia? Was it like a completely different like culture, or like was the cycle speedway different in any sort, or what?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Australia's the other side of the world, isn't it? And you go there purely for cycle speedway. I would have liked to have done a bit more sort of traveling and a bit more holidaying as well, sort of thing. You've got brilliant weather and all that sort of stuff, but it was rammed to cycle speedway like every single day. But that wasn't the worst thing, I guess. But no, the track surfaces are a bit different out there. I know you sort of had Bobby on a couple of weeks ago and he sort of mentioned about that, but the actual ride in itself, I think maybe over there is a little bit more physical, but that's absolutely fine. Other than that, the referees put you under starters orders sort of ever so slightly differently over there. And also the announcer says riders ready, you're under starters orders, and then tapes go up rather than the referee, which is different to get used to, especially because in England we're so used to the referee in front of us saying everything. So that was different to get used to. The atmosphere was a lot different as well, I'd say, in Australia. Crowds were absolutely massive for every single event. And there's a good bit of banter sort of on and off track with the Aussies and the Polish chaps over there. But yeah, I'd love to get out there again for sure.
So how did you react to like the traveling? Did you have to get there a few days earlier to be able to like prepare yourself, or did you just?
I think we had a training day like the day after we arrived, and it was all quite like quick. I think where we were staying, we also, there's about 20, 30 of us all rode a cycle speedo bikes down to Lefevre track, which is like a cycle path that follows the sea, which is really nice scenery as well. But yeah, I just think the adrenaline kicks in quite early, and there's so much going on that you just adapt quite quickly, or that's how I did anyway. I'm not sure about other people, but yeah, it was sort of arrive the next day. I think we possibly had a training session, or the day after that. But yeah, it was all guns blazing pretty much from the get-go.
So, like, obviously you have to go through like qualification phases to get to the final, but when you got to the final, like, how did it feel?
Yeah, it was different. I made the world final in 2015 at Wensfield as well, and that was like something ticked off the bucket list as such, to make a world final. But the one in 2017 felt just a bit different, maybe because it was in Australia perhaps, but I don't know, it was definitely a different feeling. Again, there's so many different feelings you can have through cycle speedo, whether it's winning a race, losing a race, or managing a team, all that sort of stuff. But I was just happy to make the final 16, and no matter what the outcome was of the final, I was happy pretty much.
So what meeting do you think you've like learned the most from?
Cool. Good question. Learned the most from?
Maybe like what's the best piece of advice you could give to someone on how you learned that?
I don't know. I think a lot of people say it. I think with this sport, I think you have to have a smile on your face when you're doing it. When you lose the enjoyment factor of riding a bike round in ovals, as such as what we do, it doesn't just have the same impact as when you are enjoying it. But I think if I could give a bit of advice to anybody, it would be to never say no. And if you're given the opportunity to ride in an event like we raced the other day at Somersham, and Noah raced, and there was lots of senior riders that rode in that, and obviously you chaps are sort of under 16, you could have sort of shied away from an event like that. But it's best to get out there and race in any event that you can, and any opportunity you get to say yes to, because the more riding you get, the more fun and enjoyment you'll get out of it.
Yeah, like you say, when we rode at Somersham, did you like enjoy that meeting? Was it fun, like just to get back on the track and have some racing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was probably a lot of people that had never ridden there before, and hats off to Leon, done a great job getting the place up to scratch and getting so many riders there for an event after the lack of racing we had last season. The track itself was probably very similar size to Horspath, but just with less banking. It was a hot day as well. It was very dry, and it was difficult to pass in some places, but you could tell the riders that sort of knew what they were doing because they weren't slipping. You just have to sort of like cruise around the bend a little bit, just to ease off the pace a little bit. But it was great to get back out there and see all those familiar faces again, and yeah, get back on a bike. I mean, I didn't do very, very well, to be honest, but again, it goes back to another question. It's a good learning curve to see sort of what sort of shape that I was in, what I need to do to get better with the British Fours just a few weeks away, and the British Championships in August, and all those events coming up. Need to put a bit of extra work in, I think.
So do you have a favourite track?
It would have to be Horspath, I think, but that's, everybody chooses their home track really, don't they? But if I was to ignore Horspath, I think I'd probably have to say either Poole or Leicester. Poole is just a great place to go, on and off track. They've probably got one of the best facilities in the country. Great big grandstand, their canteen, clubhouse, everything's great. Pits area, the way they look after the track, the place always looks 100%, and really nice people down there. So yeah, Poole's a good place to go, and Leicester as well is another one, which is a good track of mine. But if I had to pick an absolute favourite, it would be Horspath. It's different. It's a bit like Kesgrave, I suppose. There's not many tracks in the country that are that small, that banked, and you have to be a certain type of rider to race on a track like that, I think.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but like, so would you say like Horspath is a small track, isn't it? But would you say you have to like be a certain type of rider? Like, do you reckon you've mastered that track, or do you reckon you still?
It's a good question. I think if there's one person that has mastered it, it's Mark Bowler. I think everybody calls him Mr. Horspath for a reason. And it's great to see him back doing a bit of riding here and there. But yeah, I think there's lots of riders out there who struggle around Horspath. He'll probably hate me for saying this, but Andy Angel's not the biggest fan of Horspath. I think it's one of his bogey tracks, but what a phenomenal rider Andy is. But it just proves when there is some tracks out there which really are difficult for some riders. And Horspath is so technical to get around because of the tight bends and the straights aren't very long, that if you're a fast rider, you're never going to ride away from anybody, because those people that have mastered the track will just pick you off in the bends or know when and where to pass you.
So do you have a favourite team riding partner?
Favourite team riding partner? There's two people that spring to mind. The first one's probably Will Jeffrey, and he'll probably love me for saying that, but I've raced with Will for probably 2 or 3 seasons on and off the past 5 years, but he's one of those riders that when I race with him, he knows exactly where to be at the right place in the right time to come through to nick a 6.4 or 7.3 or something like that. And I'd say probably over the last sort of couple of years where he's sort of really grown as a rider, that he's been able to help me a lot more in races as well, where it's helped me to just sort of go and win a race and he can do the dirty work at the back and sit the man or something like that. So yeah, Will Jeffrey's definitely one. And I think the other one that springs to mind probably Mark Carmichael. In the final year of the Elite League, we rode together in 2016 and we were paired together, and we I don't think we dropped many points. I think the least we had was a 5-all sort of in most matches, and we had 6.4s and 7.3s. But yeah, lots of good team riders out there though.
Yeah, you said like Andy Angel's bogey track is probably Horspath, but would you say you have like a track that you haven't performed particularly well around? Or
it's got to be anything which is absolutely massive, really. So Wensfield, East Park, something like that. Especially Wensfield, I'm not the biggest fan of that place. The bends are very sort of, it just seems like you're going around the bend for absolutely ages. And the straights are too long. And yeah, when you ride on the track like Horspath week in, week out, when you see Wensfield, it's quite scary at times. But yeah, not the biggest fan of Wensfield or East Park or Newport, anything where you have to do quite a lot of pedaling.
So do you have to do would you say have to do more laps than you normally would in training to prepare yourself for the bigger tracks? Because
we have done in the past, yeah. We tried to do sort of like a 5-lapper in training sometimes, but training is so different to racing, and you boys will probably know that you can go flat out 100% in training, but when it comes to a match day or race day, you're never ever every single race flat out. You're either in front, sort of like cruising, or you might be in second place holding a man and not pedaling as fast as you have to be or something. So, and the adrenaline kicks in matches as well, which keeps your legs going. But yeah, we try and do things a little bit differently at Horspath every now and again, but I'd say most of the time it's just basic sort of like training, fitness stuff, really.
yeah, you said like when the adrenaline kicks in, but like it's just a completely different, really.
Yeah.
Like, but before a meeting or like even when you're at the tapes, do you have like any like superstitions that you do? Or
I don't know. I think I spin my wheels at the grids like the same way every single time, and I sort of always have done that. I sort of spin it once just off to the side of the grid, and I spin it again on the grid, and then the third time you sort of like slam the wheel down on the grid. if that's a superstition, I don't know, but that's the way I sort of set myself up most times when I race. And I think the only other thing which people say to me is when I sort of get myself stood up under starters orders, if someone puts their hand out, a lot of riders then sort of like sit back down again, whereas I tend to sort of stay stood up. And a lot of people have said to me that I always sort of stay stood up. I don't know why that is or why I don't sit back down again, but yeah, I just like to, when you're in the right position, you sort of know you're ready and raring to go.
So do you do things like in the pits as well to like keep yourself relaxed?
I don't know. I think because when you're managing, and it's a bit different, you're managing and riding is quite difficult because there's a lot going on. Whether it be you're trying to sort yourself out, you're trying to clean your bike, you're trying to fill the program out, you're trying to tell the next two riders what grids to go off in the race and what to do and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes it can be quite hectic in the pits. So I think for me, just trying to keep a cool head is the best thing I can do in the pits, especially when you have got riders coming up to you saying, "Oh, where am I going in this ride?" or "What do you want me to do in this ride?" And then you got to, like I said, clean your bike for the next ride, and there's a lot going on. So just keeping a cool head, really. But having those riders in the pits at Horspath, like Ben Mould, obviously current world champion, and say Will Jeffrey, that's sort of up and coming, and Lucas Nowacki, former world champion and European champion, Mark Bowler. It takes a lot of pressure off me sometimes that I can rely on them to sort of help with things in the pits as well. So I definitely think having a good team around you is really helpful.
Yeah. And I personally think that's a good point to end on. But before we go, Zac, I have one question for you. Is football coming home?
Is football coming home? Crikey. After that performance against Scotland, I'd say no. But, you know, Southgate needs to probably make a couple of changes here and there, maybe get big Barry Maguire in the squad, and I'll maybe give Jadon Sancho a run out. But, you know, we beat the Czech. We can only play what's in front of us, I suppose. So fingers crossed if it comes home.
Yeah. So, just thank you for coming on today.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me, lads, and well done for what you're doing. It's great to see what you lads are doing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Goodbye.